translating our aspiration for the contents concealed behind the veil of the package. And if we hold Jay to his own standard, here's a recent Knorr French chicken pan package, and you can see the beautiful photography, the great fidelity to the ripe red tomatoes and the pristine mushrooms and the green beans, and then the wonderful play on the soup kettle or the bowl with the steam rising out of it, and it says eat color. I'd say Jay's doing pretty well. It has a lot of appearance and appetite appeal just looking at it. Also on another note about emotion, we turn to Mark Diersk, who is our VP of Industrial Design at Laga and a design correspondent for Fast Company. And Mark talks about sort of the deep, within our brains lies a trigger that fires in reaction to color. And I think we can all recognize it, Halloween orange, Christmas green and red. We can't manipulate it or control it, but we can acknowledge it and try to understand it and its impact on our perception. And that impact is one that trumps all best efforts of words and promises. So you see those purple carrots lying in someone's garden, chances are you're not going to pick them up and take a bite because the perception just isn't going to be there. When we think about color as knowledge, we wanted to turn to somebody who really comes out of a knowledge sort of centric environment. We turn to Joe Dyer, who's the EVP of industrial and commercial business for iRobot, the company that makes the Roomba. And Joe said, think about it. How does one find out important information in a dense environment like the one we all live in, where the signal to noise ratio is very low? That means it's hard to separate the important from the superficial, the wheat from the chaff. And Joe goes back to his fighter pilot days when he was in the Navy and said, think about the fighter pilots whose displays, their cockpits, present sort of a bird's eye view of their environment. And the environment is cluttered with friendlies and civilians and bad guys. The key to making network-centric airfare, or network-centric warfare, or network-centric anything quickly understandable is, to quote Joe, color. And by the way, the bad guys are red. Another really profound example of color as knowledge is a very familiar one to most people in the design and consumer packaged goods industry, and these are Deborah Adler's incredible breakthrough pharmacy bottles. And I think the reason that these are probably the most famous package of the last several years, it's been in the Cooper Hewitt, it's been everywhere, is because it had such high intentionality to save lives. And it was done in such a simple and clean way, a problem solved beautifully with design. So I know many designers look at this and think, it's so cool that one person's imagination solving a problem that really started within our own family could produce a breakthrough like this. Speaking of great designers, then we turn to Jerry Hirschberg, who, as some of you I'm sure know, was the founder and president of Nissan Design, the author of a wonderful book called The Creative Priority. And Jerry, who comes from the auto industry, as a dean of that industry, said, color is really not about identifying or following fads or trends. It's not. No, it has as much to do with the meaning of the object as the forms, the materials, and the language associated with it. So here we look at color as an enabler of meaning. And in the future, I think Jerry would say that we're all going to need to be much more expert at meaning making in brands. Then we went a little bit outside of our industry to Polly LaBarre, who's now a correspondent for CNN and an author of a great book called Mavericks at Work. And Polly said, the more marketers can move away from using color to interrupt and entertain and demand our attention and shift it towards integrating it into a bigger set of ideas and values that the particular brand stands for, the better. But it seems fairly obvious, but I don't really see it in wide execution. And Polly has a pretty good balcony view of the business world. So I think this is a really interesting and important challenge to all of us in terms of using color in the future. It's not necessarily about bright and bold. It's about intelligent and integrated. Paul Chorney from BASF Automobile said, color, it depends. I mean, color is obviously a critical element in expressing self. And some colors, need to be bold and some need to be subtle. But all colors need to connect to what the consumer holds important at the time. which means that if we want to really be in tune with color and consumers, we need to be listening to what is important to people. Another aspect of making meaning and enabling brands to connect. Speaking of connecting, Lisa Lai is in the middle of some very interesting marketplaces. She's the president of EA International, which is a soft package manufacturer that does a lot of work for Walmart and Target, and also for high-end people like Vera Wang. And when we asked Lisa, she said, you know, I don't care whether we're creating packaging for Walmart or Vera Wang. Everybody wants their brand color to be its most beautiful at shelf, because that's how we attract. But in the future, they want that beauty, but they also want it to be sustainably produced and eco-proven. And here is a table that Lisa made for us for this presentation using Jay's beautiful Norse soup Eat Color packaging as a tabletop out of a substance she's sourced from South Africa called EcoBoard, a cradle-to-cradle sustainable substance that you can build furniture out of. And people like Lisa are really leading the way in terms of the eco-proven technologies that we're going to need to learn about for the future. Now, this all sort of circles us back to Mother Nature. And I'll end with a wonderful quote from Cheryl Heller, who is the CEO of Heller Communications right here in New York City. And Cheryl says that nowhere is color used more intelligently than in the natural world. From the bowerbird, which you can see here on the screen in Australia, that attracts its mate by carefully designing his home in color-coordinated shells, flowers, and bits of plastic, even painting the inside. Berry juice, you know, take that, HGTV, to the owl-eye butterfly that deflects its own predators by looking like them. Can you believe this? This is the owl-eye butterfly that wants to look like its predator, the owl. And Cheryl says, you know, in nature, color is not just meaningful communication, it's ruthlessly efficient, never devoid of beauty, and always allegiant to the truth. We would do well to learn from her. So I'll close by giving you 5 predictions that we have for the future of how we'll all be using color. We will all speak color. We will speak the language of color. We will harness the energy of color. We will help consumers make better, safer choices through the use of color. We'll really become information designers using color to protect people and to create knowledge-rich environments. We will excel at consciously creating meaning. You know, we'll be the storytellers using color, and we will honor nature, not just as the authentic master of color, but as a place and the source of all that we want to protect.